Hello everyone, this is Mr. Bellante and for 7th grade social studies, and the topic we're going to be focusing on for this lesson is the Black Death, also called the Black Plague. The Black Death is one of the most interesting topics in 7th grade social studies and also one of the darkest chapters in history. So I want to go over the standards and lesson objectives. So the standard we're covering today is Standard 7.67 map the spread of the bubonic plague from Central Asia to Europe and describe its impact on global population. In today's learning objectives, students will be able to explain the causes and effects of the Black Death, describe how the Black Death spread from Asia to Europe, and describe the despair and helplessness created by the Black Death. So, we're going to start off right here as our warm-up. And I want you to take a look at this picture above. One of the effects of the Black Death was it led to a culture of despair. Our work from this time period reflected this as pictures of skeletons, graves, skulls, and darkness represented the dark and sad times of the day. So I want you to take a look at this picture, describe what you see, and explain what special or unusual qualities you see from this image. When you look at this picture, I see obviously 5 skeletons. Okay, each one's doing a thing. 4 of them were kind of dancing around. One's playing music. Then you see another skeleton. It looks like in his grave, and it's kind of going up with a blanket. So take a good look at this picture. Look over it. Maybe click on the pause button, and then write your thoughts. Describe what you see, and eventually write this on Google Docs. And you can turn it into Google Classroom. Okay. So we're going to go on the next slide here. I want to go over the vocabulary related to the Black Death. So first term obviously is the Black Death. What is the Black Death? It was an epidemic of the bubonic plague that killed as many as 1/3 of all Europeans between 1347 and 1352. Next term here, bubonic plague, a deadly infection spread by fleas that live on rats. And we'll talk more about that later. A scapegoat, blaming someone or a group of people for problems they did not cause. We'll talk about scapegoats related to Jews. Networks, a closely interconnected group of people or things. Okay, and finally, peasants' revolt, unsuccessful revolt by peasants against feudal lords in England in 1381. So these were the 5 vocabulary words from the reading under the Black Death in the textbook. I want to give a straight up overview. The Black Death was an epidemic that happened in the mid-1300s in which the bubonic plague wiped out nearly half the population of Europe and 75 million people worldwide. Black rats carried fleas that spread the bubonic plague, causing symptoms including lymph nodes that swells up into a painful bubo, resulting in 3 to 5 days of severe illness before death hits. Because black rats were common throughout towns and ships, the bubonic plague spread at a rapid rate. As you see a picture right here, this would be a picture of a flea that caused the bubonic plague, and these fleas lived on rats. Rats were the host body of these fleas. And basically, people back in the 1300s didn't know much about science and medicine. They were very religious and superstitious, so when a massive amount of people are dying from mysterious death, they're going to believe God was punishing them for something they did wrong. And basically, a lot of people did die, and we're going to explain more about this, okay? A lot of people, okay? Next one, we're going to talk about the causes of the Black Death here. And fleas that lived on rats carried the bubonic plague. It carried this bacterium called Yersinia pestis, which is from the oriental rat flea. Okay, so this originated in Asia. Okay, and originated in Asia in the 1300s and then carried over to Europe. Now, one question students ask me is, why did people back then accept rats as part of their life? Well, back in the medieval times, people didn't know that rats can carry diseases and make people ill. Okay. Also, there were so many rats that it was hard to kill them off and control their population, as rats can reproduce at a rapid rate and live actually up to a year. Okay, and they were everywhere in towns all throughout Europe. Okay. Other causes of the Black Death, obviously, people infected with the plague rode on merchant ships from Asia to Europe. Since Europe had a lot of rats living in high populated areas, it spread very quickly, very contagious. And during the 1300s, there was no medicine to cure victims. It spread through the air as victims would cough and affect others. Also, people were affected by having contact with the bubo on the skin and getting the infected fleas on people. So, as we know, the bubonic plague was very contagious, especially that transferred through the air and inhaled. The symptoms were very awful. You would get buboes or swellings on your skin, and you would get painful flu-like symptoms and die within a few days. There was nothing doctors or anyone could do to stop this illness or disease. Now, I want you to answer this question here. What were the causes of the Black Death? So I want you to pause and maybe go over the few slides. I want you to answer that, also on Google Docs. The spread of the Black Death. Well, here is a map that kind of shows you the spread. And basically, it first started in China in the early 1300s, and then it made its way through India and the Middle East. Before it reached Europe, it killed millions of people in Asia. In 1331, the plague struck in China and contributed to the end of Mongol rule. The disease would spread rapidly along the trade routes as it was a first hit southern Europe, actually hit Sicily, the island off Italy, then along Italy, and then it's made its way up north and struck Eastern Europe. Overall, 1/3 of Europeans lost their lives from this epidemic from 1347 to 1352. So I also want you to answer this question from this. How did the Black Death spread? Okay, pause it and go over that question. Jews in the Black Death. Okay, now during the Black Death, Jews were accused of poisoning the wells. As a result, they were considered the scapegoat of causing the plague. Remember, the scapegoat is someone blamed for something they did not do. Jews were persecuted, tortured, and even killed for being blamed for causing the Black Death. Jewish communities were destroyed. During the 14th century, there was a lot of anti-Semitism, that means hatred towards Jews, in Europe, as Jews were hated for causing the death of Jesus, and many had unpopular jobs such as money lenders and debt collectors. And one thing was that Jews were hated even before the Black Death, and many were blamed, and many were either exiled or massacred. Those who refused to convert to Christianity, well, they would be burned to death, which thousands were. Okay. Now here's a quote. It says, some said that this pestilence was caused by infection of the air and water, since there was at this time no famine or lack of food supplies, but on the contrary, great abundance. As a result of this theory of infected water and air as the source of the plague, the Jews were suddenly and violently charged with infecting wells and water and corrupting the air. The whole world rose up against them cruelly on this account. This is a quote from Jean de Vinet from the Chronicle. And so this quote, I think, says it all about how Jews were treated in the Black Death. So I want you to answer this question right here. And maybe pause the slide. What is your thoughts about this quote? Okay, so I want you to pause, quickly answer this question on the Google Docs. Now we're going to talk about the effects of the Black Death. 75 million people from around the world died from the bubonic plague, which mainly in Asia and Europe. As you can notice, drove many people into isolation, fleeing towns. Now, if I was in a population or a town and most people were dying from this mysterious disease, I would leave too, okay? And so as a result, in a 5-year period of 1347 to 1353, a third of Europe's population was wiped out. Think about this. Here in the United States, we have over 300 million people. Imagine if over 100 million people died from mysterious disease. What do you think would happen from this? Well, I personally would leave this country, okay? Also, effects from the Black Death, it led to a culture of despair. It's led to artwork of people dying and stuff. You've seen these pictures of the slides. There was a shortage of peasants, so they received higher wages as a result. Now, the death would hit all levels. It would hit priests, peasants, it hit knights, everyone, okay? It would also encourage new church practices and also led to the beginning of the modern age as well. So this would end feudalism. And so I want you to take a pause and answer the question, what were the effects of the Black Death? Now here's your assignment, okay, from this lesson here. You're going to imagine you're living during the Black Death in Europe between the years of 1347 to 1352. You will write a diary entry minimum of half a page about your experience living during this dark chapter in history. Explain your feelings of despair, including losing loved ones, that might be any family member or significant others, and what plans you have for the future. You must provide a date and during this time period, and follow the proper guidelines when writing a diary entry. Look at the student sample to help guide you, which you'll look at soon. Submit your diary entry onto Google Classroom using Google Docs. Make sure you have the proper sharing properties and putting it to others can view in edit mode. Also follow the rubric, which I'm going to show later. So this right here is a student sample. Okay, I want you to take a pause, read it over. As you see, I have a date from the time period. I put right down Dear Diary, and I put sincerely, I put my name. Okay, now let's look at this right here, a rubric for the diary entry. Okay, as you see, it's 20 points, 4 points for 5 different categories: character development, ideas and content, use of research, clarity and mechanics, organization, and creativity. So take a look over the rubric, take a pause at it. Okay, and finally, this is my references for this presentation. If you have any questions or anything, please always email me. And always pause through and go back and rewind this video segment. Thank you very much, and I will see you later. Bye.